Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my creative process. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back. Episode 208, the ongoing series of paying homage to the masterworks and some of the most iconic paintings ever continues. This week we've got Francisco de Goya's Saturn Devouring His Son, kind of a horrific and gruesome image. We've got this really strange looking, vicious kind of character, whom I presume to be Saturn, sort of devouring his son, eating this headless, armless figure. It's got some loose, painterly interpretations of the form. Going to be interesting to reimagine this in 3D. So I'm excited to get started. If you want to support the practice, please, I encourage you to check out the link in the description below. There's, the ability to do a quick one-time donation, which I really appreciate. And if you want to get involved in the community, there's a couple different tiers to which you can subscribe. So check those out. Let me know what you think, and let's get started. So, I'm just going to start by taking a sphere, editing it, sort of expanding it a little bit. What I'm going to do is just really start blocking this figure out to begin with. There's the head. What's up, Vish? How's it going? I should also note that you may notice the studio behind me is pretty empty. The shelves are barren. The pictures are pulled off the walls. I am moving next week, and so I hate to announce it, but there will be a little bit of a hiatus, a couple weeks at least. So I've got 2 weeks at least that I'm taking off. It's possible that we'll get into a third week, depending on how quickly I can set up the studio in the new location. I do have some recap videos from previous episodes set up to sort of fill in the gap. So these are time lapses of episodes of the practice that I've done in the past. So it won't be totally empty. I know, don't hiatus. Sorry, Dean. I got to do it, man. I'm moving across the country. It's got to happen, unfortunately. But as I'm saying, there are, for new viewers, most of these are pretty old episodes. So I think there will definitely be something that you can take from them. So I encourage you guys to check those out. And I've got 2 of those a week. So for the next 2 weeks, there will be at least 4 episodes premiering. And so that'll hopefully at least keep people a little bit occupied. Won't be a total lack of content from this channel. But, undertaking a big move, unfortunately, gonna have to take a little break. And a lot of my favorite podcasts and shows during the summer, they'll take a couple weeks off. They'll say, "Hey, everyone, love you, love the show, thanks for supporting, but go on summer vacation." Any old full-time job usually recognizes the validity of that kind of thing. So it's not too big a deal. So I'll just be gone for a couple of weeks, and we've got some fill-in content in the meantime. So hopefully that'll scratch the itch, let's say. What's up, Myers? Hey, Grippus. I am moving to the Philadelphia area. Last year, I moved from San Francisco to Austin, and that was pretty great. There's a lot to love about Austin. Ultimately, the wife and I decided that it was time to move back home and be a little closer to family. Luckily, both of our families are from the Philadelphia area, so it kind of works out. Thanks, Fahad. Appreciate it. For the artist from China, hey, Myers. Very cool. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah, this is an interesting one. You can see that the forms are kind of muddy a little bit. So we're gonna have to interpret some of what's going on here. Like, look, is this like a really short leg, or is his leg actually behind a landscape of some sort? I think it's probably the latter there. But yeah. Figure it out. Figure it out. What I'll probably do is I'm going to block these initial forms out, and then there's a good chance I'll use a like a volume measure. Bring all this stuff together. That'll make a single unit, and that'll also that'll keep things flexible. Let's sweep this arm as well. What I'm doing is I'm just selecting this elbow area, and I'm using a chamfer because we're having that weird, what do you call that? Like the mitered edge acts really strange. Fahad, the name of this painting is Saturn Devouring His Son. I think Saturn was a Greek god, I believe. I don't know if I have my mythology straight here. I'm pretty sure there's a Greek god who I guess also the god of Zeus. See, Zeus was the Roman version. I should have done a little more research before I picked this up here. What I'm going to do quickly is just throw these guys into the volume builder. Throw that into a volume mesher. And now it sort of unifies the two. And then we can go into this hierarchy, and I think I'll just add a smooth layer here. Bring it down just a little bit, but that's going to join things together. And eventually I'll add the hands, gripping this guy. We're going to get in and sculpt the head a little bit, and I'll probably play with some hair objects and stuff like that. Yeah, this is a very scary painting. It is. It's insane. Very iconic, though. All right, so let's see. So now we're going to add leg. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to add more leg than we probably need. And I'm going to assume that this isn't a ridiculously short calf and foot area. I'm going to assume that there's implication of some sort of landscape behind here, and he's sort of kneeling on a large hill. Assume that's the case. That's how I'm going to treat it, at least. That's what we're doing for now. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a bit of a cheat move, but forgive me. I'm just going to go ahead and add it to this existing hierarchy. It's an all right start. And I'm going to actually just duplicate it, scoot it over, grab this spline, manipulate it, so it's in the right position. Just using the chamfer here to round out those points. What a chamfer does basically is it takes the end point, like a single point, adds two other points and a curve in between the two. Chamfered edge. Right, so got that guy blocked out. Let's add that landscape. I'm just going to use a landscape primitive to start. And it looks like kind of kneeling. I think that's too many subdivisions. We can just use a collection of these. Give this guy area to kneel. This guy being Saturn himself. Vicious dude. I think the story behind Saturn is that he was worried that his children would become more powerful than he would and would sort of take over. I don't know if it would be Olympus in the Greek pantheon of mythologies. Yeah, he was afraid that the kids would take his throne, would take his spot. So the other thing I'm going to do here is, because we've got, since we're working towards a 2D image, I'm going to pick a camera angle. So first I'm going to set up sort of our aspect ratio here. So just sort of do that by eye. Take this in a little bit. 960 by 1080 start. I think it's narrower than that. Another thing I've been doing recently too is, I think, Shift V will bring up your viewport options. I'm going to go over to View, and under here, Tinted Border, I'm going to turn that up to say, 80% or something like that. So you can see what our viewable area is a little bit better. I'm going to get a view, like an angle that I like, get us close. See that this elbow and this foot is really off camera, so to speak. Yeah, Saturn was a very bad person. Well, the gods and the titans in these mythologies were they weren't people, but they weren't very good either. They were pretty brutal entities. All right, so I'm just seeing your question here, Fahad. When I'm modeling a 3D person, is it easier to model it as a T-pose than rig it and pose it to the pose, or I want to just model it as the pose? I would say that depends. So if you're, what the heck? If you are doing a 2D illustration like I'm doing now, and you don't plan to move the model at all, and you just want to create, let's call it a sculpture, right? And I would say you can just model it to the pose. If you're going to be creating an animation, if you're going to be creating a character that you want to put in different positions, if you're going to create a character that you're going to use for multiple illustrations, that you want to have them in different positions. Like if this was going to be a character design that I was going to do for a client, and I was going to have, let's say, 12 illustrations that I needed to make, each of which had the same exact character in a variety of positions, then I would want to make it a T-pose, which is basically just having your character like this, rigging it, and then posing it individually for the different poses that you needed. So I would say it depends. You always want to make things as flexible as you possibly can. So that would aid in the flexibility. Does that make sense? If I was going to be handling something like that, like I just described, I would go for much more anatomical accuracy. But because this is just a single pose, then I'm going to just treat it as a singular image. So I'm going to create this character, or this camera, go into it. And now I can sort of move around. Whoa, junk in the trunk, huh? What we'll probably wind up doing as well is using lighting and heavy shadows to obscure some of this stuff and go for this sort of look. I use some hair objects to get some of this stuff going on as well. I could show you some of the hair tools. All right. Now, as you've probably, if you've tuned into any of the these homage episodes that I've been doing over the past month or so, which I think this is my 7th episode, recreating classical paintings. So that's, almost 2 months now. You'll see that you'll remember that I'm not going for like exact reproductions. I want to have some faithfulness to the original image, and I want to make it obviously recognizable to someone who understands or remembers the painting. But I'm not going for like an exact reproduction. I do want to, create it in my own style. Obviously, going from an oil painting to 3D rendering is going to change the look of the piece quite a bit. So I'm embracing that. I don't feel the need to make it an exact reproduction. All right. At this moment, I'm actually going to lock camera angle. Add a compositing tag. I know this is behind my ugly head right now. And a protection tag to this camera just so I don't accidentally move it. All right, let's get into modeling this head. That's, I think, the facial expression is one of the places where I can really add my own touch to it. I'm going to make a group here just so we can start adding things to it. Add the eyes first. I'm holding Alt so that the objects that I add are going to be in the same position, scale, and rotation as the object that I had selected. I'm going to add a symmetry. Oops. Hold Alt with that as well. It's going to allow me to have everything sort of centered on this existing sphere and in place where I need it. Also going to make a copy of this. What I like to do, you've probably noticed this if you watch my videos frequently, but I like to make an off null. Just turn that off, and that's sort of my backup layer. It's my it's where I keep copies of things that I might want to use in the future. That's because I'm going to subdivide this guy. Actually, what I'm going to do is no, I lied. I'm going to subdivide that guy. Maybe I'll actually divide it this way. I don't know why that repositions things. That's super annoying. Because it's inside of a null? Yeah, I guess it is. All right. That's going to make it a little better to sculpt. I'm doing that because what I want to do is use these sculpt tools. Flatten some of the facial areas, start sculpting. We need out of this facial area. Hey Ben, thanks man. Yes, the lighting is going to be interesting here. I think that's going to drive a lot of how this image comes off. I think I'm going to make the nose kind of a simplified version. I might really lean into kind of simplifying this one. And we need this big exaggerated mouth. And I think the way I'm going to handle that is just by extruding this circular spline and booleaning that out of this, this head geometry. What I think I actually need to do is add sort of more of a chin area here. Grab the sculpt tools and just expand this. This is sort of a squarish jaw here, and a lot of this area is going to be obscured by the beard and hair that we're going to add. Let's just kind of lock it in. So, add bool. Looks kind of insane at the moment. I'm going to expand this circle. Scoot that in a little bit. A little more squarish. All right, now he's looking straight down. I want him to look at the camera a little bit. That makes him sort of cross-eyed. So I'm actually going to pull the eye out of this symmetry object. I'm going to make a copy of it. Then I'm going to just remove the negative component from this x coordinate, and that'll copy it directly over. And that's the beauty of keeping everything in a null that is oriented symmetrically against the objects within it. That makes sense. So we go. So I think the next thing I should tackle is probably this figure. I guess a Saturn's sun. Probably the most gruesome bit. First, what I'll do, procrastinate and not make that right away. Grab these and scale down wrist area. Maybe even make the shoulder area a little beefier. That perhaps, and what I think I'll do is probably pop into a new scene real quick so I can have things centered as I create this character. It's going to be a little tricky. It's the best way to handle this. As is often the case, I'll start out with a cube. Add a booty. I'll do is just group that, throw it in a null quickly, as I did previously. Add symmetry. Hey, Orange Juice. Personally, I do not use a tablet. Tablets, I think, are really great for sculpting things. But when you're working procedurally, as I often do, I think a mouse is a little easier. But then again, it's personal preference. Some people find that the wrist bothers them a lot less when they use the tablet. The thing is with the tablet, when I'm working procedurally, I find that I'm like moving my arm around a lot more, and it takes longer for me to do things. I also find that I put the tablet in my mouth a lot so I can type. But I think a lot of that is personal preference. Doesn't necessarily matter. Whatever you find easiest and best. I'm just going to use a spline really to block out this leg. I'm going to go ahead and add that to symmetry object and sweep it. Really weird interpretation of that spline going on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the details inside the spline, the scale, and scale it so that I can get some of this curvature to the leg. What I'm going to do first is change the intermediate points inside this spline to subdivided. So that way I get the geometry I need along the length of this sweep so that I can actually make those changes. That makes sense. We'll just scale the things like this. And what I can do is modify the width of the spline along its length. Of the sweep along its length, I should say. What I'm also going to do is sort of bring these in. beefy calves. Feet really are not so visible. Just gonna kind of leave those. Let's see here. Yep, I think I'll just wind up using another sweep. This arm area here. I'm going to add the cube and the sweep to the volume builder and throw them inside a volume mesher. Thanks, Nathan. How's it going? Appreciate you tuning in. This is both terrifying and interesting. It's a very compelling image. I mean, the look in this guy's eyes and then the bloody bits, it's all, yeah, it's all kind of terrible. All right, so let's go ahead and add this. Oh, no, I lied. First, I want to do smooth out the end. Yeah, that is true, Grippus. Yeah, it looks like he's like really sunk his fingers into the figure. Nasty. That's probably what we need to tackle next. pop into main model. This sun figure into position here. It's also interesting how you add elements and you realize sort of what, the more elements you add, the more you realize what is sort of off. And not that I want it to be exactly the same, but you see where these feet fall in relation to the thigh, head is to the mouth, arm. Let's just go ahead and make some of those adjustments. What's up, EKS1? Thanks for tuning in. How you doing? For anyone just tuning in, I have to say, unfortunately, that, and you may have noticed this with the empty studio and walls behind me, that this will be my last week in this studio before I move. And so practice will be taking a couple weeks off, but fear not, I've have some content to sort of hold you over in the meantime. I took some older episodes, some of my favorite images that I've created on the practice. I've taken the live stream and I've made a time lapse out of it and set it to music and have those scheduled to run, 2 of them a week actually, so that there will be a little bit of content still on the channel. But y'all don't forget about me in my absence, and you'll see, you'll get to see quick versions of the, some of the episodes that I've done in the past. I guess that leads me to another question. Would you be interested in seeing, I know some people really prefer the long, full-length live stream. And some people, I think, a 2-hour video is potentially a little long for their taste. Would you guys be interested in seeing sort of recap videos? Maybe we what I could do is just present a time-lapse version of the live stream, just like uploaded later in the week. Just sort of, what people call speed art. Is that something that would interest you? Thanks, Fahad. Moving is never fun, but gotten a lot of the packing done already. Just got the big drive ahead of us. Big, long drive. Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right, let's quit dilly-dallying and making these hands. Why don't I just open another model? Open another scene. That's funny, EKS. That sort of defeats the purpose, right? Yep, and then with the 2-hour version, obviously I'm commenting and sort of notating what I'm doing. Well, I'm not always great about that. It's interesting, there was a while there where I went back to sort of a full-time contract gig at a company, and I didn't have the time in my schedule to live stream for a few hours every Tuesday. So what I did was, over the course of the week, usually on a Saturday, I would create, I would record my screen instead of live streaming, and I would upload a time-lapse version of that recording, and I would do a voiceover separately. And there were some, I think, benefits to that. Oh, that is a wonky-ass thumb, huh? There were some benefits to that because it was interesting that, once I sped up some of the tedious portions of the live stream, and then did a voiceover separately, allowed me to sort of more concisely move through what exactly I was doing. And I think there's some challenges, obviously, to trying to create a piece of art and then also talking about it and answering questions at the same time. I don't mind doing it. I like a challenge, but as you can imagine, it can be difficult to create and narrate at the same time. So I think there's some advantage to sort of handling those parts of the video separately. And what's interesting is a lot of those videos remain my most watched and most popular. So. This is a bit wonky of a wrist, obviously, but I'm going to be adding this to our, what do you call it? Our volume measure. Yeah, speeding up will get more views, which isn't the whole idea, but it's some of it. So you can see immediately that this is too narrow, and he's got kind of gnarly, strong-looking old man hands. I'm going to make a copy of this hand, and I'm just going to start modeling it. And again, this is another instance where if you wanted to do this properly, what you'd really do is you'd rig this and then pose it. But who wants to do anything properly? I'm just going to grab these pieces of geometry, just kind of bend them into shape. I'm not going to worry too much about this thumb because this is really sort of going to be tucked behind the figure. What I might do is maybe, once I get everything in position, is sort of sculpt this figure. It looks like fingers are kind of digging in. This is what's happening. I'm going to add that to the volume measure, and you'll see that it like sort of disappears. What I need to do is go into this volume builder and move my smooth. Let's see, actually I liked where that smooth layer was. let's call this hand. What we'll do is make a folder. Add the hand to the folder. Not sure if I actually need to do this. Let's try it without. I'm going to add a reshape layer. Put that above the hand. See what's happening is this smooth layer is above the hand. That's not what I want. So let's bring these up. It's gonna be a little bit of a challenge here. That's right, Ben. Yeah. Next week. Next week is the move. The paintings and the pictures have come off the walls, and the shelves are empty, fortunately. Had to happen. And so I'll be off for a couple of weeks. Then I'll be back with a new office, new setup, new loft apartment. Looking forward to it. Change can be good. Starting to think I might want to pull this hand out. What's up? What's up, friend? Can't pronounce your name. The plot is sad because this is a recreation of a bit of a horrible piece from art history. Actually, why don't I'm going to make a copy of this hand again. I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to undo for a while. Yeah, the fingers are good. And I'm gonna just treat this hand as a separate object for now. Copy it over. Put that other one in position. You see, I did is just added a negative value to it. I would hope the world would change. I'm not sure if I have that kind of power. I will say most of my content is family friendly and polite and not so gruesome. That's for sure. But this is such a compelling and ridiculous image that I had to try it. Yeah, I mean, it's despite the rather gruesome subject matter, it is an amazing painting. Goya has a lot of crazy stuff. Go look up his works. Oh man, you're making me sad. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of beauty and positivity in the world. Um, this week we're doing a sad image. Most weeks we don't. Most weeks it's positive and pleasant. That's okay. I like your ideas. I'm glad you're commenting. But here's a little additional philosophy. Without the brutal, the sad has no meaning, or the pleasant has no meaning. Life is all about contrast, and Without light, there is no dark. Without happy, there is no sad. And if we don't take a moment to appreciate the difficult, gruesome, horrible things in life, then we can't appreciate the sunny, amazing, and positive things in life either. What do you think? You buying it? This is really a bit of a hack job with these hands here, I must admit. What I do to sort of thicken them up a bit is use this plate tool. Are you talking about this up here? This S? That is a plugin called Magic Solo, which basically just isolates the selected object in your viewport, hides everything else. Super, super useful. Free plugin too. Google Magic Solo Cinema 4D plugin. You shall find it. By Nitro Man, I think is the name. Ah, yes, this. This is just what I've done is taken the sculpt tools, all these brushes, whoops. I pulled them out and I basically just modified my menus to add them here. I use them so much. All right, getting pretty close. What I'm going to do is copy these guys into the volume mesher. Use these to kind of transition out. The versions in the volume mesher, I'm going to delete the fingers from. Let's try it this way. Time. UI, delete. And I'm going to close that polygon hole. Same with this finger, UI, UI, and that just grows the selection. UI, delete, close polygon hole. It's helping to create this transition between the two. Another cool thing you can do is if we check out our volume mesher, it's become ridiculously dense. But if I turn up adaptive here, areas that require less detail will automatically have less detail applied to them. It'll like sort of selectively pull out detail where it's not required. It is a little bit wonky. So let's find a happy medium. Let's go up to like 3 here. And we could turn adaptive down a little bit. Better. Well, now let's do the same thing for this other hand. Okay. All right. Getting there. I think I want to add trickles of blood here. Now, let's see. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to use the volume the volume mesher and builder to kind of break up these splines a little bit. I know that they sort of degrade the quality in a way, but I think that's going to work for our purposes here. Cobra Arts, thanks for tuning in. All right. Got a lot of what we need in place now. Lighting isn't so far off from what I think I'll actually use. I think what's time to do now, add some hair. The way I'm going to do that is by making a copy of this sphere. Selecting the areas that I want to add hair to. Beard area. Whole side of the face, really. Quite a wild haircut. Or lack of haircut, I should say. Whoops. I'm just going to hit UI to select the inverse. Actually, then I can check for any little polygons I've missed here. I'm just going to hit delete. And I'm going to scale this bit of geometry in just a little bit, kind of hide it behind actual mesh for the head. I'm going to do volume, not volume. Let's do simulate, hair objects, add hair. Boom. All right. And then we automatically get our hair material here. Let's make this a gray color. All right, and what it might make sense is to add an interactive render region and just kind of keep an eye on the hair that we've added. One thing you can do is just hit play. It's weird. There we go. That gets us fairly close, right? So one thing I like to do is make it thicker. I always feel like this hair looks a little thin. I'm going to thicken that up. I'm going to bring the specularity way down. I don't like that ultra shiny sort of CG hair look that you get. Looks like the thickness is a little too high. Let's call it 1.5 and 1.2. We put a little bit of variation in that. Let's put some kink. I'll bring the scale down too. What? 20 and 20. The hair needs to be a little bit longer, actually. Call it 120. Start it over again and play it through a little bit. That's update. Nice. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this hair, just so I've got it. And then I'm going to say hair, because I want it to stick in this position. And then I'm going to start brushing it into a place where I want it. So we've played it through. We've had it drop down a little bit, which is pretty close to what we want. And then I'm going to go simulate, hair edit, as I say, set as dynamics, right? And what that does is it keeps the hair in position as we go back to the beginning of the timeline. Then I'm gonna go to simulate hair object, hair tools. I'm just gonna pop this out so we have it, because I think I'm going to be going back to this brush a bit. And we can't really see what I'm dealing with here. I'm gonna scale this down for the moment, and then we can comb our boy's hair. want. Drag that up, see what we got. So bad. I'm gonna scale this brush tool down. And what's great is you can use the open and close bracket, just like in Photoshop brushes. I think pretty much any brush that I've encountered in Cinema, you can make bigger and smaller. Like that. Give them the old comb over look. Brushing this stuff can be a little bit of a pain. Got sort of this bald spot here that I'm trying to cover up. Sounds like me several years ago before I started shaving my head. Also, I really like the way it's looking, except for this sort of area here. Add. Sort of borrow some of this from back here and really get into those ridiculous comb over techniques. Make another copy. Then I'm going to go hair, simulate, do our set as dynamics again. I'm going to play it through. That it drops down a little bit. Oof. That's not what we want. Let's get our old hair back. No bald jokes. Ooh. Now it's kind of ruined again. Dang. Shoot. So I think I'm going to have to redo this combing thing over. Here's another thing we can do, actually. I'm going to get our original hair out. And I'm going to select this object, our head here. I'm going to add I can't see this behind, well, I'll pull this out here. Tags, hair tags, and I'm going to add a hair collider. I'm going to add that to the sphere itself. That should allow me to have the hair actually bounce off of that. Nice. Okay, so that's going to give us a little bit of a better result, I think. So now the hair isn't intersecting with the geometry. Okay, great. That's much better. Now that we've done that, I'm going to grab this hair. I'm going to hair, simulate, hair edit, set as dynamics. I'm going to make a copy of it because I know better at this point. Then I'm going to grab our brush again. Just do a little bit of brushing, not as much as before. Just to sort of get this shape that we like. See what we're dealing with here. Now, a lot of what's going to go next, I think, is going to be using materials to make it work. All right, so I think we've got too much kink. Let's turn on clump as well. Radius I'm going to turn down, but the count I'm going to turn way up. Turn on some frizz, turn up our kink. Turn down the scale on our frizz. And finally, let's add a bit of curl. A little bit more curl, a little bit less variation. Cool. All right, now add material for the ground. I'm going to make that really dark. Very dark gray. Add that to these landscapes. Now inside this hair material, I'm going to make some changes because I don't love the shadowing in here. I want it to be a little bit flatter. Well, actually, first let's try, you can see the difference between how standard and physical renderer handle the hair. Let's see if going inside just standard versus physical. See, I like how physical treats it more like an object with mass, but I don't like the way it gets ultra shadowed. So I'm going to go back to the physical renderer. But inside of the hair object, you can go to illumination and you can adjust some of the way that the shadows are treated. So I'm just going to go shadow density. I'm going to turn that down to like 20%. And you can see that it'll affect the way this is shadowed. While that's going, I'm going to mess with our blood material here. I'm going to Turn down the default specular. I'm going to add reflection. Roughen that up a little bit. I'm also going to add some transparency. I know this is going to make things render a little slower. All right. Not as much change in the hair as I'd like. Go back into this illumination. Turn shadow density down. Turn self shadow like almost all the way down as well. The noise we've added to the figure is too small. Scale this way up. There we go. Now you can see it. The shadows are a little less dense. Closer to what I want. Better. I think I want to make the hair a little bit lighter too. I think actually we can turn down the shadows even a little further. Let's see what that gets us. Better. Probably too much reflection here in the blood. Turn that down even further, both of those. Now we've got only a single source of light, which is pretty much what I want, but I want a little bit of a fill light here. be honest. I think what I'll do is add a sky object. Make a luminant material. Just make this like a very light, very dark gray. Maybe add just a bit of blue to it. Turn it down a little bit. It's going to give us just a little bit of a fill. Also going to lighten our background a little bit. We'll see. Maybe actually I don't want to go to blue range of things. Maybe it makes sense to go to a warmer sort of range. Also going to turn GI up just a little bit. A little bit of warmth helped. Kind of like that. I think though we can turn down the luminance a little further. I'm going to add a noise as well. gonna try a different shadow type on this spotlight. I think changing the angle of the head really helped a lot. First of all, we get a really nice reflection on the eyes here. Helped a lot. Feels more frantic and manic from this angle. Yeah, glad I made that change. Now let's see how it looks. A different shadow type. It's going to be a harder cast shadow, which might actually work. I almost never use that shadow type, but let's see what that gets us. Tough to say. I don't like them both. Do set ambient occlusion. I forgot to hit value transparency. So I'm going to change color, our ambient occlusion. Maybe crank it up a little bit, just because there's really strong sort of shadows, high contrast in this image. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the intensity up about 10% on this lamp light. And I'm going to add just a little bit of yellow, a little bit of warmth, because the highlights are pretty warm. So let's try that as well. What do you guys think? Should we do the hard shadows or the soft shadows? Tough to say. Yeah, that's better. That warmth in the lighting, I think, really helped a lot, especially in the hair here. Do area, but make the lights smaller so they're just a mix. Like make another light and mix them. Purpose comes with the let's try it. So you're saying do I see. Do an area light. Make it really small. Is that what you mean? That? Try it. Try it. What I also want to do is adjust this blood a bit. Also do, let's go inside of there and just make a smooth layer. That's way too much. Just a bit. Try Grippus. This wouldn't be the first time that Grippus hooked us up with a pretty useful comment. Appreciate that. Very routine viewer as well. Pretty awesome. Gotta tell you, it's super rewarding to see folks coming back week after week. Thank you. Awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Let's try it. Let's see what we get from that lighting. We needed to add a bit of extra blood. I think that's going to be good. Oh, now we lost that highlight on the eye, which is bad. Highlight. Oh, that's true. Yeah, look at that. It's somewhere in between. Nice. I think what I should do actually, make the light even a little bit smaller. right, we are getting pretty close. Calling this final. Yeah. There's little highlights on the eye. They seem small, but they make a huge difference. Right. Digging it. Let's push out a slightly larger rendering. Awesome. As a reminder, while this is rendering, if you feel like supporting the practice, if you want to buy me a cup of coffee or, get involved in a larger capacity and, perhaps join the community. We've got a Discord server where folks are, there's a small but active community growing there, and folks are helping one another out and sharing links to cool tutorials and tips and tricks, and also just sharing their work to get feedback from other folks. And it's been pretty cool. I'd like to say that it would get cooler yet if there were more people involved. So check out the link in the description below and you can see what I'm talking about. If not, the show's always going to be free when I stream it. So Don't worry, it's not going to go away, but consider supporting the show. Thinking about getting a higher quality webcam after I move, and that stuff's not free, so might be worth thinking about supporting me and the show. For sure, EKS. Appreciate you tuning in. Almost done this rendering here, then I'm going to save it out, pop into Photoshop for a quick bit of color correction, and then we'll call it an episode. This is really kind of a fun one. The facial expression is really kind of nuts. There's something about the look of someone's facial expression when the area above the iris is clear and in the white, and the lower eyelid touches the iris. It gives you this really kind of manic, crazy look. Let's save that out. It was also just cool to see like how little we could get away with in the in the background, in the foreground here. That was really quite simple. And using this lighting with heavy shadows, we really could obscure a lot and really just focus on a couple key areas like, the blood and the face and things like that. So go. So I'll mess with the curves first. A little bit higher contrast. So it's what they call like an S curve, like a higher contrast S curve. Add even more stuff in the shadows. Oh yeah, you're right. Look at that. I didn't even include the eyebrows. Huh. Well, you know what I could do? You don't do this kind of thing. What my tablet, this would be, someone asked earlier if I use a tablet. I don't typically while I'm modeling. This would be a good time to break out the tablet, but unfortunately, I've already packed it. Yeah, I'm going to go without. It'd be a great time to paint it in. All right, and I skipped the eyebrows. That's a nice comment, Grippus. Right, yeah, cool. Trouble chat thing here. Okay, there we go. All right, so what else? What I'm doing now is just kind of beating things up with adding some noise and some filters and stuff like that. All right. But added a little bit of brushiness, some filters, just to sort of rough it up a little bit. Feeling a little bit too smooth for my taste. But I think at this point, I'm going to call it finished episode. We could really play with the texture here and do a lot of interesting stuff. It really is with this type of piece. There's really a lot of depth you could go into, but I think the result we've achieved is pretty sweet. The facial expression's fun. It was fun messing with the hair. The blood's kind of interesting. I think some of the big shortcomings are with the hands, perhaps, and yeah. But other than that, I think it was a worthwhile episode, a worthwhile exploration. As I always say, these aren't really finished illustrations. You know, we spend about 2 hours every week practicing some techniques. doing sort of an exploration or exercise. It's almost like a sketch or a warm up. That's why the show is called The Practice. So hopefully there were a few tidbits or ideas that we sort of explored that you found useful. Like I mentioned before, there's going to be probably a 2-week hiatus. Possibly it stretches into 3 weeks, depending on how the move goes and how setting up the new studio goes. But in the meantime, there's going to be some recap episodes that happen, some sort of time-lapse versions of episodes that we've done in the past. So if you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll find those to be interesting and it won't be too much of a repeat performance. If you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm doing, definitely hit me up at DLGNCE on Instagram and Twitter and other social medias. New videos every Tuesday, so please hit that like and subscribe button. Hit the bell icon for notifications. Definitely share it with a pal or on your own, blog or social media feed if you think this sort of thing is interesting or useful. The website is diligence.studio. So if you want to see my body of work and the latest and greatest of what I'm working on, you can check me out there. And until I usually say until next week, but it'll be a few weeks from now. So until, later in September, until after the move, this is Stuart saying, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys tuning in. The community is growing and thriving, and I can't emphasize how much I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. So thank you so much. And this is Stuart saying goodbye. See you soon, gang. Thank you. Later.